conversation happens somewhere you're not in the room. A decision gets made about you without you. And when it's over, you find out that you were expendable, that you were, in the end, replaceable. And it stings because you told yourself you were valuable. You worked hard. You showed up. But hard work and showing up, it turns out, are not the same thing as being irreplaceable. Now, I want to be careful here because I'm not talking about job security. I'm not up here to give you tips on how to keep a paycheck. That's a small ambition, and you didn't come here for small ambitions. What I'm talking about is something much bigger. I'm talking about becoming the kind of person who creates so much value that the world reorganizes itself around you. The kind of person whose absence would be felt. The kind of person that others fight to keep, to work with, to be near. Because let me tell you something that most people never fully understand. Your income, your opportunities, your influence, all of it, they don't rise because you wanted them to. They rise because you became someone that the marketplace could not afford to lose. And that's a very different game than the one most people are playing. Most people are playing the game of appearing valuable. They want to look busy. They want to seem important. They want the title and the recognition and the credit. But looking valuable and being valuable are two entirely different pursuits, and only one of them actually pays. Here's the confession most people won't make out loud. They believe somewhere deep down that they deserve more than they're getting. They believe they're worth more than they're being paid, more than they're being recognized, more than they're being given. And they carry a quiet resentment about it. But resentment has never once raised a single person's value, not one. You can be as bitter as you want about being underpaid, and it will not add a nickel to what you're worth, because the marketplace doesn't respond to how you feel about your value. It responds to your value. And that's actually the best news I can give you tonight. Because if the world paid based on how deserving people felt, you'd have no control over anything. But it doesn't. It pays based on what you bring, and what you bring is something you can build. Now, where did we get this idea backwards? Where did we pick up the belief that value is something you're owed rather than something you create? It started with a promise that most of us were given very early. We were told, do your job, keep your head down, put in the years, and you'll be taken care of. And a lot of people organized their entire lives around that promise. They became reliable. They became loyal. They became present. And those are good things, but they made a critical error. They confused presence with production. They confused loyalty with contribution. They thought that being there was the same as being needed. And so they spent years perfecting the art of being adequate, and then wondered why they were treated as adequate. You get paid for the value you bring, not for the time you spend. And nobody ever sat them down and made that distinction. Nobody said, your hours are not your worth. Your presence is not your production. The clock does not measure your value. The results measure your value. Let me show you how this plays out, because I think you'll recognize it. Two people work in the same place, doing roughly the same work for roughly the same number of years. One of them does exactly what's asked. Not less, but never more. They complete their tasks. They meet their obligations. They fulfill the description of the job. The other one does something different. They do what's asked, and then they ask a question the first person never asks. They ask, what else is needed here? They notice the problem nobody assigned to them. They solve the thing that wasn't in their description. They make the person above them look good and the person below them better. Now, here's what's fascinating. On any given day, you might not be able to tell these two people apart. They both come in, they both work, they both go home. But over 5 years, over 10 years, a gap opens up between them that becomes impossible to close. One of them has become essential. The other has become optional. And they started in the exact same place. The difference wasn't talent. The difference wasn't luck. The difference was that one of them treated their role as a ceiling, and the other treated it as a floor. One asked, "What's the least I can do and still be fine?" And the other asked, "What's the most I can contribute?" And the marketplace, which is always watching, always measuring, sorted them accordingly. Here's what I want you to understand about the person who becomes irreplaceable. They didn't get there by demanding it. They didn't get there by negotiating harder or complaining louder or waiting for someone to notice them. They got there by becoming genuinely, undeniably valuable. So valuable that the recognition became unavoidable. Because value that's real can't be ignored forever. You can overlook it for a while. You can underpay it for a season. But eventually, real value creates such a gravity that it pulls opportunity toward it. The person who is truly needed doesn't have to chase. They get chased. And I know that's frustrating to hear because most people want the recognition first. They want to be paid more, and then they'll contribute more. They want the title first, and then they'll act like they deserve it. But it doesn't work in that order. It never has. The value comes first, always. The reward follows the value, the way a shadow follows a man. So the question you have to answer, and answer honestly, is this. Are you trying to get paid for who you are, or are you working to become someone worth paying? Because those are two completely different projects and only one of them ever succeeds. Now let me talk about a word that most people misunderstand, and misunderstanding it costs them dearly. That word is scarce. We think of scarcity as a bad thing, as a lack, as something to be avoided. But in the marketplace, scarcity is exactly what creates value. The things that are common are cheap. The things that are rare are precious. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If everything you offer is common, everything you offer will be treated as cheap. If your skills are the same skills everyone has, if your effort is the same effort everyone gives, if your attitude is the same attitude everyone brings, then you have made yourself common. And common things are easy to replace. But if you develop something rare, a rare skill, a rare reliability, a rare way of solving problems, a rare depth of care, then you become rare. And rare things command a premium. Rare things are protected. Rare things are held onto with both hands. Nobody easily lets go of something they know they can't find anywhere else. So the work of becoming irreplaceable is really the work of becoming rare. It's the deliberate decision to stop being interchangeable, to stop offering what everyone offers, to develop a combination of skills and character and results that simply isn't sitting on every corner. And most people never do this because becoming rare requires becoming uncommon. And becoming uncommon is uncomfortable. It means doing the work that others won't do. It means developing the discipline that others won't develop. It means holding a standard that others find exhausting. The path to rare runs directly through the territory that common people avoid. Let me tell you about a young man I knew years ago. He started at the very bottom of an organization, the lowest position, the smallest pay, the least respect. And by every reasonable measure, he had nothing going for him. No connections, no advantage, no head start. But he did something that separated him almost immediately. While everyone around him was doing the minimum, he was studying the maximum. He watched the people above him. He learned what they did, how they thought, why they made the decisions they made. He took on tasks nobody wanted. He solved problems nobody asked him to solve. And he did it without demanding anything in return. For a while, it looked like a waste. People probably thought he was foolish, working harder than his pay required, giving more than his position demanded. But he understood something they didn't. He understood that he wasn't working for his current pay. He was working for his future value. He was building himself into someone who would be impossible to overlook. And within a few short years, he wasn't at the bottom anymore. Not because someone did him a favor, not because he got lucky, but because he had made himself into the kind of person the organization couldn't run without. He had created a dependency in the best sense of the word. He had become the answer to too many important questions. That's what value does. It doesn't ask for promotion. It makes promotion inevitable. It doesn't beg for a raise. It makes the raise a matter of self-interest for the people who pay it. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to lose the person they can't do without. Now let's get specific about what actually makes a person valuable, because I don't want to leave this in the abstract. Value isn't mysterious. It isn't a personality thing. It isn't something you're born with. It's built out of specific components, and I want to name them for you, one at a time. The first component of value is the ability to solve problems that other people can't solve. This is the foundation of everything, because the marketplace, at its core, pays for problems solved. That's it. That's the whole transaction. The bigger the problem you can solve and the fewer people who can solve it, the more you're worth. Most people spend their careers solving small problems, and they solve the same small problems everyone else can solve. And so they earn what everyone else earns. But the person who becomes irreplaceable has done the work of developing the capacity to solve big problems, hard problems, the kind of problems that make other people nervous. And here's the thing about hard problems. They're hard on purpose. They keep most people away. And that's exactly why they're so valuable to solve. If you want to increase your worth, don't run from the difficult problems. Run toward them. Become the person who steps forward when everyone else steps back. Because the person who solves what others avoid becomes what others need. The second component of value is reliability. And I want you to understand how rare this actually is. Most people are reliable when it's convenient. They deliver when the conditions are good, when they feel like it, when nothing gets in the way. But reliability under good conditions isn't reliability. It's just cooperation with circumstances. Real reliability is when you can be counted on regardless of the conditions. When your word is good on the hard days as well as the easy ones. When people know with complete certainty that if you said you'd do it, it's done. That kind of reliability is so rare that it becomes a form of currency all by itself. Because think about what it does for the people who depend on you. It removes worry. It removes doubt. It lets them stop checking, stop wondering, stop managing you. And that peace of mind is enormously valuable. People will pay a premium. They will hold on with everything they have to keep someone who never makes them worry. Your reliability isn't just about the work getting done. It's about the trust it builds. And trust is the most valuable thing you can offer anyone. The third component of value is the willingness to take responsibility beyond your assignment. Now, this one separates the ordinary from the extraordinary faster than almost anything else. Most people draw a very clear line around their responsibilities. This is my job. That is not my job. And they defend that line with real energy. But the person who becomes irreplaceable doesn't defend the line. They dissolve it. When something needs to be done and it falls into that gray area of not technically my responsibility, they do it anyway. They pick up what others put down. They own outcomes, not just tasks. They think like the person in charge, even when they're not. And this changes how others see them completely. Because when you take responsibility beyond your assignment, you signal something powerful. You signal that you can be trusted with more. And trust with more is exactly how you get more. Nobody hands significant responsibility to someone who guards their little corner of the map. They hand it to the person who has already shown they'll take care of the whole territory. The fourth component of value is the ability to make the people around you better. This is a form of value that most people never even consider, but it's one of the most powerful forces there is. Because your individual contribution has a ceiling. There's only so much one person can produce, but your ability to elevate others has no ceiling at all. The person who lifts everyone around them, who makes the team stronger, who develops the people beneath them, who supports the people beside them, that person becomes worth far more than their own output. Because they multiply the output of everyone they touch. And a multiplier is always more valuable than an adder. Always. If you want to become someone they can't afford to lose, become someone whose presence raises the whole level of the room. Become the person that others become better around. Because when you leave and everyone gets worse, everyone can feel it. And that's a loss no smart person is willing to accept. The fifth component of value is the willingness to keep growing when you don't have to. Most people stop growing the moment they reach a comfortable level of competence. They learn enough to do the job and then they coast. And coasting is the beginning of becoming replaceable. Because a person who has stopped growing is a person whose value has been fixed. And a fixed value in a changing world is a value that's actually declining. But the person who becomes irreplaceable never stops growing. They're always adding skills. They're always deepening their understanding. They're always becoming more capable this year than they were last year. And because of that, their value keeps rising while everyone around them stays flat. 5 years of continuous growth against 5 years of comfortable coasting produces two completely different people, even if they started out identical. So there are your 5 components: solving hard problems, being reliable under all conditions, taking responsibility beyond your assignment, making others better, and never stopping your growth. Master those 5, and you will not have to ask anyone to value you. Your value will announce itself. Now, I want to address the thing that stops most people from doing any of this, because it's a real obstacle, and I don't want to pretend it isn't. Most people won't invest in becoming valuable because they don't want to give more than they're currently getting. They think, why should I do more when I'm not being paid more? And on the surface, that sounds fair. It sounds logical. But it's the exact thinking that keeps a person stuck forever. Because here's the sequence, and you cannot reverse it no matter how much you want to. You become more valuable, and then you get paid more. Not the other way around. If you wait to be paid more before you become more valuable, you will wait your entire life. You'll be standing there with your arms crossed, demanding recognition for value you haven't yet created, and the marketplace will simply walk right past you. The person who becomes irreplaceable understands this deeply. They're willing to give more than they're getting for a while because they know that giving more is the only way to eventually get more. They plant before they harvest. They invest before they earn. They pay the price before they receive the reward because they understand that this is the only order in which the transaction ever happens. And this requires a kind of faith, but not blind faith. It's faith grounded in how the world actually works. It's the confidence that value, once created, cannot stay hidden forever. That the effort you put in ahead of the reward is not wasted, but stored. That you are building an account that will one day pay out, even if the balance isn't visible yet. Now, let me warn you about a trap, because it's a trap that catches a lot of ambitious people. The trap is becoming valuable in a way that only serves your own advancement, without genuinely serving the people around you. There's a kind of person who studies value, who learns the mechanics of it, and then uses it purely as a tool for their own climb. And that person may rise for a while, but they don't become irreplaceable. They become tolerated. Because value that's purely self-serving is fragile. The moment a better opportunity for that person comes along, everyone knows they'll take it because they've made it clear that their loyalty is to themselves. But value that genuinely serves others creates something the first kind never can. It creates devotion. It creates the desire in others to keep you, to protect you, to make sure you never have a reason to leave. The person who is truly irreplaceable isn't just skilled. They're trusted. They're not just capable. They're cared about. And that combination, real capability married to real care, is the rarest and most valuable thing a human being can offer. It's the thing that makes someone say, I don't care what it costs. We are not losing this person. So don't just become skilled. Become someone whose skill is in service of something larger than yourself. Because self-interest can make you useful, but only genuine contribution can make you irreplaceable. Let me shift now to something practical, because I've told you what value is, and I've told you why it matters. But I want to give you something you can actually build with when you go home tonight. And it starts with a single question that I want you to ask yourself every single day. The question is this: how can I create more value today than I did yesterday? That's it. That's the whole discipline. Because value is not built in one heroic act. It's built the same way everything worthwhile is built, in the daily, ordinary repetition of a small commitment. 1% more contribution. One more problem solved. One more person helped. One more skill sharpened. And if you ask that question every day and answer it with real action, something remarkable happens over time. You wake up one day and you're a different person. You're operating at a level the old you couldn't have imagined. And it didn't happen in a dramatic leap. It happened in the accumulation of 1,000 ordinary days of deliberate growth. Most people never ask this question at all. They ask a different one. They ask, how can I get through today? Or, how can I do the minimum today? And those questions produce a minimum life. The questions you ask yourself determine the life you build, because your questions direct your attention, and your attention determines your action, and your action determines who you become. Now here's what I want you to do, and it's simple but powerful. I want you to become a student of the problems around you. Wherever you are, whatever you do, start paying attention to what's broken, what frustrates people, what slows things down, what doesn't work the way it should. Because every one of those problems is an opportunity to create value. Most people see problems and complain about them. They point them out. They talk about how somebody should fix them. But the person who becomes irreplaceable sees a problem and thinks, that's mine. I'm going to be the one who solves that. And every problem they solve, they add another brick to the structure of their own value. Because you have to understand, problems are not obstacles to your success. Problems are the raw material of your success. They are the very thing you get paid to handle. A world with no problems would be a world with no value to create. So stop resenting problems and start collecting them. Start seeing every difficulty as a chance to demonstrate what you're worth. Here's another practice. I want you to develop the habit of doing more than you're asked, quietly, without announcement, not to be seen, not to be praised, but because you've decided that this is simply who you are, a person who over-delivers, a person who gives full measure and then a little more. Because when you consistently do more than expected, you reset the expectation. You establish a standard, and soon the people around you come to rely on that standard, come to expect that little extra, and can no longer imagine getting along without it. That's how you become woven into the fabric of things. That's how you become the person whose absence would leave a hole that nobody knows how to fill. And I want to be clear, this is not about being taken advantage of. This is not about being a doormat who gives endlessly and receives nothing. This is a strategy. a deliberate investment in your own value, made with the full understanding that value created will eventually be value rewarded. You're not giving it away. You're building it up. Now let me talk about the skill of becoming known for something. Because value that's scattered is weaker than value that's concentrated. The person who is a little bit good at many things is less valuable than the person who is exceptionally good at one important thing. There's power in being the one people think of when a particular need arises. When someone in your world thinks, I need this handled and handled right, you want your name to be the first name that comes to mind. That's a position of enormous strength. It means you're not competing with everyone. You're the answer to a specific question, and specific answers are worth far more than general ones. So choose something. Choose an area where you're going to become genuinely excellent, better than the people around you, better than most people anywhere. And then relentlessly develop that excellence until you own it, until your name and that capability become inseparable in the minds of the people who matter. Because a person who is exceptional at something important is never short of opportunity. The opportunity comes looking for them. And I want to warn you about complacency because it's the quiet enemy of everyone who has achieved a little success. There's a dangerous moment that comes after you've become valuable. You get comfortable. The rewards start flowing. The recognition arrives. And a voice inside you whispers, you've made it. You can ease up now. And that voice is the beginning of your decline, because value is not a monument you build once and then admire forever. Value is a living thing that must be maintained, defended, and continuously renewed. The world doesn't stand still, and the moment you stop rising, you begin, relative to everything moving around you, to fall. The person who stays irreplaceable is the person who treats every level of success as a new starting point, not a finish line. Who keeps asking, even after they've arrived, how do I become more valuable still? Because they understand that the price of remaining irreplaceable is the same as the price of becoming irreplaceable in the first place. Continuous, deliberate, ongoing growth. There is no summit you can rest on. There's only the climb and the choice to keep climbing. Now, I want to say something about how all of this affects your relationship with fear. Because most people live in a low-grade fear about their position, their security, their future. They worry about being let go. They worry about being passed over. They worry about not being enough. And that fear shapes their behavior in the worst possible way. It makes them play small. It makes them protect what little they have instead of building something larger. But when you become genuinely irreplaceable, that fear simply dissolves. Not because circumstances become perfect, but because you built something that circumstances can't easily take. You've made yourself so valuable that your security no longer depends on anyone's mercy. It depends on your contribution, which is entirely within your control. And that's a kind of freedom that most people never experience. The freedom of knowing that you don't have to grip your position out of fear, because you're the one others are afraid to lose. The freedom of negotiating from strength rather than desperation. The freedom of being wanted rather than merely tolerated. That freedom is available to anyone willing to pay the price of building it. And the price is nothing more than a commitment to relentless value creation. Let me tell you what this looks like in a full life, not just a career. Because value isn't only something you build at work, it's something you can build everywhere. In your friendships, become the friend that others treasure. The one who shows up, who can be counted on, who adds something to every life they touch. In your family, become the presence that makes everything better, the one whose steadiness holds things together. Everywhere you go, ask the same question. What can I contribute here? How can I add value to this situation, this relationship, this moment? Because a life spent asking that question becomes a life of profound value. And a person who lives that way becomes irreplaceable, not in one domain, but in every domain that matters. And here's the beautiful part. The person who lives this way doesn't have to demand love or respect or loyalty or recognition. They earn it so completely that it flows to them naturally. They become the kind of person that others build their lives around. The kind of person whose absence would be a genuine loss to everyone who knows them. And that, more than any title or paycheck, is the real prize. Now, I want you to understand something about how this changes over a lifetime, because I think it's the most important thing I'll say tonight. When you start on this path, you have to give a great deal and receive very little. You're building value that isn't yet recognized. You're planting seeds that haven't sprouted. And it can feel, in those early days, like you're pouring your effort into a void. But if you persist, if you keep creating value day after day, year after year, a shift eventually happens. The value you've built begins to compound. The reputation you've earned begins to precede you. The skills you've developed begin to open doors you didn't even knock on. And the ratio reverses. Now you're receiving far more than you're giving, not because you're giving less, but because the value you built up over the years is finally paying its full return. The people who quit before this shift never see it. They give for a while, don't see immediate reward, and conclude that it doesn't work. But it does work. It just works on a longer timeline than impatience allows. The reward is always waiting at the end of the road, but you have to walk the whole road to reach it. So don't measure your value by what you're receiving today. Measure it by what you're building. Because the account is filling even when the balance seems low. The value is accumulating even when the recognition is absent. And one day, sooner than you think, the world will begin to treat you the way you've been quietly preparing it to treat you all along. I want to leave you with a simple picture. Somewhere, in some conversation you'll never hear, people are going to decide how much you're worth, how much to pay you, how hard to fight to keep you, how much of their future to entrust to you. And in that moment, none of your excuses will be in the room. None of your good intentions will be in the room. None of your feelings about how much you deserve will be in the room. The only thing in the room will be the value you've actually created. That's the whole ball game. And the good news, the wonderful news, is that the value you create is entirely up to you. Nobody can stop you from becoming more capable. Nobody can prevent you from solving harder problems, from becoming more reliable, from taking on more responsibility, from lifting the people around you, from growing when you don't have to. Those are all choices. They're available to you starting tomorrow morning. And if you make them consistently, deliberately, day after day, you will become something that the world does not easily find and cannot easily replace. You will become the person they can't afford to lose. Not because you demanded it, not because you were owed it, but because you built it, one act of value at a time until the truth of what you were worth became impossible for anyone to ignore. That's the path. It's open to you. And the only question that remains is whether you'll walk it starting today or keep waiting for a recognition that will never come to someone who hasn't yet earned it. Become worth keeping. Become worth fighting for. Become the answer to the questions that matter most. And you will never again have to worry about your place in this world, because you will have made yourself the one thing the world cannot bring itself to let go of.